So we're live streaming. Okay, welcome everyone to the Komiti Hanganga, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meeting of 11th of July. Everyone in the chambers is probably familiar with emergency procedures, although we have got some visitors down the back, so I'd ask you to familiarise yourself with what's on screen there. Essentially just to take heed of staff advice, and if everyone could switch their phones to silent, which that would be much appreciated. And invite everyone to join me with our opening karakia. Mino tātou, whakatakate hau ki te uru, whakatakate hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ihi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Apologies, I've received an apology from Councillor Barrett, and I believe Mayor Barry is going to be joining us later by Zoom, but he may be an apology for early departure. So I'll move that apology from Councillor Barrett. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Thanks. We've got two people who want to make public comment to us today, and we'll start with Helen Swales, who's speaking on behalf of the Jackson Street programme, speaking to item 5C, the Jackson Street Three Waters renewal options. Welcome, Helen. You know the drill. 3 minutes and there may well be some questions for you. Thanks.
Kia ora, Chair and elected members, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about the item Jackson Street Three Waters renewal option. So with regard to the recommendations that you've got there, 1 through to 11, we certainly support all of them, but in particular, items 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, and obviously 11, and hoping that actually this recommendation from this committee goes through with option 1, which is the preferred option that the officers have put up to you. The rationale behind it is, even though if you look at the timetable in the report that's been given by GHD, which is on page 112, looking at all three, it is a long period of time that we're looking at to do this. And out of the 7 blocks, 4 of them are actually affected by our businesses on Jackson Street. We definitely support having all 3 waters done at the same time, but also understand and appreciate that there are some financial restrictions that might be coming into play with regard to the LTP around the renewals. We started the conversation and the journey with officers and consultants and the person that was given the contract, Wellington Pipes, when we were just looking at the stormwater. We had 50 people arrive at that, and all of them were in agreement that they wanted to do it block by block and do detours rather than do road closures where you only closed half the road. I think we've got that landed by officers, that it will be block by block and put detours in. With regard to the information that's been put there and the age of the pipes, we would just like to let you know that we are starting to see some degradation in the potable water, where during some days and some times, whilst the water is clear, we do often, and it's increasingly, starting to become quite cloudy or look as if it's got iron in the water that is there. We post these things on our closed Facebook page so that we're aware that these things are happening. And after reading this report, whilst it's not contaminating the water as such, we can see that with the increase in volume of people using the water and the pipes along there, that it will probably start deteriorating. When you look at the assessment and the weighting program that GHD have done for you, it certainly does support option 1. We would look at making sure that we have, which is what we did when we did the facades and parapets, we worked with the planning people or the planning officers of Hutt City Council and had regular meetings with them so that we can talk about any issues that came up. For us, that comms is really, really important to make sure that if there is any issues. The other thing that we would support having all 3 done at the same time is if for any reason, when you look at the depth and the placement of those 3 pipes on the plans that they've got, should there be any rupture or any breakages or anything with particularly the waste pipes, then you've got everything on site so that you can actually remedy that quite quickly. I'm not quite sure whether an assessment has been made over looking at doing them individually as to the risks, because those pipes are at various levels, and the most shallow one out of the 3 pipes is the potable water. So it's just me coming here saying that we've had the conversation with our businesses, and that was by a poll and email, and all of them are in support, particularly those that are most affected from Queen Street to Cuba Street, to have all 3 waters done at the same time, but also understand that there might be some financial constraints there. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That's great. Councillors, any questions for Helen? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, you mentioned that sort of everyone was in favour of all 3 options at once. Obviously, I know you're very well connected with a lot of the business on Jackson Street, but was that every business that responded, or half of them? Like, could you give us an idea of how many?
So out of the 235 that responded, 80, so from Queen Street through to Cuba Street, we had 75% of those businesses respond, and that's 66 businesses. The rest of them that responded were the ones that saw themselves being affected by their customers making their way to them that normally come along Cuba Street or Udi Street to get to us, or to get to them, rather.
So that was my next question. Was it clear in that that this would be Jackson Street closed for 2 to 3 years?
Oh, absolutely. We're in no doubt that whatever happens in any part of our street will have an impact on all businesses. We have, particularly on the weekend, we have businesses come from all of the Wellington region, and they come from all directions, Councillor.
Cool.
Yeah.
And finally, I just wanted to acknowledge the public meeting that you held on this. This is a really good example of you bringing together the business community. It was really clear at that meeting that what officers were proposing is not what the businesses wanted.
Yes.
And now what we have in front of us is exactly what was being asked for probably about a year ago. So thank you for your work in this area.
No, you're welcome, and thank you for acknowledging that, Councillor.
Thanks, Helen. Add my thanks to the liaison that you've done over this. A very important project for Petone, and it's good to see that something's underway. I hope it goes smoothly. Thanks again. Right, our second speaker in public comment is Dave Harle, who's speaking to item 11, which is the Economy and Development Director's report, in particular the item in there about Riverlink. Welcome, Dave. You've got 3 or 4 minutes to speak to us, and please leave time for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Kia ora, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak around the Riverlink. I think it's a vital and visionary initiative. Firstly, too, I did prepare actually a PowerPoint presentation, but obviously I wasn't aware I needed to submit that prior to today's meeting, so my apologies for that. So I'll just talk to this. Riverlink's going to improve the traffic flow, State Highway 2 of Melling, that's great. It's going to reduce carbon emissions, that's also wonderful. Just take you on a bit of a journey. So I'm here today, I guess, to talk about a request to see whether the Council and the Alliance would look at a grade separation at the eastern end of the Melling Link Bridge, the new bridge, and Rutherford Street. I'll just take you on a bit of a journey. About 35 years ago, I was sitting in a little town in southern New South Wales having dinner. And it was a little town that had a little river outside, which actually was covered, had cafes and restaurants. And being a Lower Hutt boy, I got a napkin out and I drew a vision for Lower Hutt turning to face the river. And of course, we are now looking at doing that. So it's kind of interesting for me. My point is that under the current design, and I've seen a number of designs, and I went to Andrews Avenue and looked at the pop-up display you had there, and I also recently attended a meeting with the Alliance at the Chamber of Commerce building. So the east-west flow has 3 traffic light controlled design points, as I understand it, the latest design. And there's obviously, grade separation at the new Melling Bridge and Rutherford Street would remove, as I understand it, one of those traffic light controlled points. That would improve traffic flow and it would, again, reduce carbon emissions. Raising that point with some of the staff at the Alliance, they addressed 5 of my key points, but they seemed a bit nonplussed when I suggest that, which suggested to me perhaps that that hadn't been considered. And I guess when we think about the fact now that the Cross Valley Link is designated more strongly as a road of national significance, there's probably going to be some change in the traffic flow in and around Lower Hutt as a result of that. In relation to the practicality of Rutherford Street, if we look at the Korokoro to Hutt Road overbridge, that is 125 metres long to get from a height of 6 metres at State Highway 2 on the eastern side of State Highway 2, 125 metres down to the bottom of Hutt Road by Kmart. What I'm proposing into Queen's Drive is also about 125 metres. So from grade, it's doable. I'm not professing to be a traffic management expert, I'm not. As I said, I did have a presentation prepared. This may not be, in fact, I won't bother doing that. That'll be confusing. My point is this, that I appreciate that the project is constrained with money. New Zealand's in that position. What I see frequently with New Zealand projects is that we save some money and then in 10 years' time we go, why didn't we do that grade separation at Rutherford Street? So I'm asking, if that hasn't been considered, that council staff and Alliance consider a grade separation at Rutherford Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. That's thank you for thinking about these issues. And thanks for tipping us off that you wanted to speak to this meeting, because that's given us some time to ask officers for a response, which has been formulated. But councillors, are there any questions for Dave while he's got the microphone? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, just want to be really clear what your ask was. So you're saying rather than the bridge landing at the Rutherford Street, Queen's Drive round intersection where Hot Springs is on the corner, you're saying go that extra 30 metres and land at the McDonald's roundabout?
To be fair, Councillor Dyer, in terms of despite going to a number of meetings, in terms of the information I've seen and what I've seen on the website,
Yeah.
I'm actually unsure where the current design ends.
Yeah, so it currently lands at the Hot Springs roundabout, where Dulux is on the
Okay.
left, Hot Springs is on the right.
So
there.
Yep,
I'm
thank
just
you.
wondering what you mean by grade separated. Do you
So-
mean you want the bridge to go over?
Over Rutherford Street,
Yep, and then land at the next roundabout, or go even further?
it would go past High Street into partway towards McDonald's in Queen's Drive.
Oh, so connecting up with King's Cruise, like down by New World?
Yeah.
Like a flyover
Not
through?
quite that far.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, thank you.
Any further questions? Thanks, Dave. Thanks for. I'll ask. I think it's going to be John, Eddie, and our head of city delivery has, prepared a response to what you've raised, and John's going to give us a bit of detail.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll actually ask Eddie to come up to the table and talk through. He's been involved with the Alliance as part of CDU. So.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks, Dave. Look, we considered the proposal Davis put forward, and with the limited time, I've sought advice from Alliance members as well as from our internal urban development team, and got some points I wanted to discuss. And they are not exhaustive points, but they are sort of key points why we think that an idea has some pros and cons. So currently what the Alliance view is that if you extend the bridge from its current landing point at the Queen's Rutherford to Queen's High, it will leave an overall clearance from the top of the bridge deck to the top of the Rutherford Street of 4.2 metres. And under the bridge manual clearance, we could have a bit of a problem because the absolute minimum requirement is 4.9 metres, and that goes up to 6 metres if it's an over-dimensional vehicle. So that will create a challenge, which means we have to dig up Rutherford Street up to 2 to 3 metres to make sure that clearance is available. And that creates further challenges down the track in terms of groundwater there, and we have to sort of regularly pump it out because that creates a low spot. The other challenges obviously adds extra cost. I think you raised that. If you add extra span as well on top of from High Street, from Rutherford to High Street, that could mean that the bridge abutment needs to be of a bigger sort of size to accommodate the extra span, or we have to lift the bridge up. If we go down the path of widening the bridge abutment, then it could actually create a segregation where it could impact on Rutherford Street, so that it may no longer be a through road. May have to actually cut it off to allow for that bridge embankment or abutment to be created. There are other challenges around that proposal around social issues, because when you have a bridge in the urban areas in this form, underneath the bridge creates a lot of social issues around lack of amenity values. The properties which sort of are right next to the bridge are usually devalues in properties because their ground floor do no longer have any frontages. And also it creates those challenges around the further development potential of those properties. Also crime prevention, we have to go through crime prevention assessment as well, and I think, underpasses creates an areas with poor lighting or with areas of dark areas which could actually harbor some of those crime opportunities. Also impact on local traffic movement. So if we have to redirect traffic through now around High Street, it could create, we have to relook at the intersections within the city centres to see what else it needs to accommodate in terms of change of traffic signals, remarking. So there is extra cost and extra modelling work we need to do. There's also impact on businesses because at the moment Harvey Norman has a frontage and they have been very clear around making sure they have direct accessibility from the state highway. And I think this one, if you land the bridge at the High Street, will create a challenge from them, potential challenge with loss of that frontage to the and accessibility to the main state highway area. Also countdown, we need to think about that, in fact, and any other private properties around there, which we need to acquire now, because that intersection of the Queen's Drive needs to be a lot wider to land the bridge. So, I mean, this is just a very quick review from our team, which highlighted quite a few areas of concern, but just we haven't done any thorough work, obviously, to substantiate it, but that's just initial feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie, for that very full response. I'm not sure it's particularly useful to get into a discussion now about the pros and cons and the advantages and disadvantages, but Dave, I think you've raised something that's can feed into ongoing discussions. We have a major projects board that looks at this thing. We've got regular discussions on Riverlink, and I think your idea, if it's seen to have merit, will crop up again. Unless councillors have got an urgent question for Eddie, or I think we might leave it there.
May I respond? I don't want to get into a to and fro, but...
No, neither do I, but very quickly, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. So my understanding in terms of Waka Kotahi and New Zealand transport on state highways, the bridge clearance must be 6 metres, which it is at Korakora. My understanding is that on access road, local roads, it's 4.3 metres. So if it's at 4.2, as Eddie has indicated, it would require 100 millimetres of road to be dug out to achieve that 4.3 clearance. If you look at Farrington Street, the Normandale Bridge is between 4.12 and 4.28 clearance. In terms of Harvey Norman, there's a number of points there. In terms of Harvey Norman, I've thought perhaps that their entrance could be moved to what would become the disused Melling Link stub road, for want of a better term, which actually would provide a much better entry and exit for their customers. There was one other point in there, I think your third point, you talked about social issues. We have overbridges everywhere around the city, so I don't see that that's a reason for not doing this. And so there was another point in there that...
Yeah.
Anyway, look, yeah, thank you. I appreciate
You raised
I won't
the
take more of
idea,
your time.
Dave, and
I would ask, as I said, I came here to ask if this could be considered. I'm not sure whether I get minutes, and I perhaps could respond more fully to the points that have been raised, and I think they're valid points.
Yeah, or officers may want to take the discussions offline for, further swapping of views. But thank you very much for raising the idea and thinking about the future of our city, and thank you, Eddie, for giving that quick response. I know you didn't have much time. Cheers.
If
Deputy
Dave
Lewis?
had a presentation, could that be sent?
Dave, if you wouldn't mind sending through that presentation, it can be emailed out to councillors.
Thank you, I'd be delighted to. Thank you.
Excellent idea, Deputy Mayor Lewis. Thank you. Okay, That's the end of public comment. Moving to conflict of interest declarations. Does any member have a conflict of interest they want to declare? Okay. Moving on to our first item, which is to do with approval to consult on the alcohol fees bylaw. It's on page 10 of your agenda. Welcome Angela Gordon, Senior Policy Advisor, to speak to this item and tell us if there's any extra information you want us to be aware of, Angela.
Good afternoon. Not a lot of extra information, just a couple of notes. So the alcohol fees bylaw obviously covers our licensing fees in the district. What we're proposing in this is to seek approval for the public consultation to increase alcohol fees to achieve 100% cost recovery, as the current bylaw only achieves 90% of the costs. The proposal of 100% cost recovery also achieves a long-term plan projected revenue. Yes, that was it. Open for comments or questions.
Councillors, any questions on this topic? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, the report in paragraph 11 says that in 2023, we recovered 93% of our costs, which is obviously more than our target. Now, in 2025, we're proposing like 80% increases to fees, like huge increases. What's changed since 2023 to now? Is it just our staffing costs have gone up? Like what? Obviously, we're trying to recover the cost, and we are proposing to increase the extra 10%. But we're only 7% off that last year. Just wondering what's changed between then and now.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Predicting costs and revenue is not an easy exercise, and it also depends on the volumes of applications that we receive, obviously. Last year we did achieve 93%. That was primarily due to quantifying how many FTEs we actually used in that field with the alcohol licensing. Initially it was a bit of an estimate, but we used Time Track, which tracked everyone's time, and we were able to quantify the number of FTEs that worked on that. So that's the reason why our costs reduced and we achieved 93%. We haven't been able to increase the fees over the last 2 years because of the bylaw needing to be reviewed. During that time, our costs have continued to increase. So, yeah, we're not going to achieve 90% over the next 2 years, but if this bylaw is approved, we should be on track to achieve 100%, as Angela said, which is in line with our LTP projections as well.
And then another question, it's not very clear in the draft bylaw or the accompanying papers. Obviously, there's an application fee, which I'm assuming you pay as like a one-off fee once every X number of years, and then you also pay the yearly fee for every year within that period. That process isn't really explained very well. Like, is it a 3-year period you get it for, and then you need to go for it again? I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like it should be in there for the public to at least see it.
Yeah, so initially a license is issued for 12 months, which is a probationary period to see how the licensee operates. If that's renewed after the first year, it's a 3-yearly cycle after that, which also impacts on the revenue that we earn. But yeah, we can certainly make that more clear in the paper.
And then one other statement that's actually in the draft that I don't quite understand it, so maybe it could be rewritten clearer, but also if you could explain to us what it means. It's at the top of page 22, where it says an increase of 3% each year achieves the previously desired 90% cost recovery. However, only the 100% cost recovery option will achieve the LTP projected revenue. Is that sort of saying the first year of this, we will recover 100, and then going forward, we'll put the fees up by 3% every year, but we'll now only recover 90%? I'm not too sure what it's trying to say.
Yes, I agree. I think we could make that quite more clearer. The increases of 3% each year will achieve the 100% cost recovery. So we can certainly correct that and make it more clear.
Councillor Tupou?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the fee setting currently in our bylaw and in comparison with, say, Wellington City Council, where it sits in their LTP. So when this comes up, I think this will be reviewed, say, in 5 years or so. Would it be sort of aligned before we sign off that LTP? I can't do the maths in the minute off my head, but will that sort of be aligned in case we do decide to change that sort of structure? Or approach, rather, sorry.
Oh, I realize that Wellington City Council's taken a different approach, that they are proposing to move their alcohol fees from the bylaw into the long-term plan, annual plan process. And that was solely for the reason that they feel that it's a little bit more of a flexible approach and that they can adjust the fees as needed on an annual basis. And we did look at that as a possibility for us, but because it's not a legally tested approach, it's a little bit less transparent. There was a view that the council could be challenged on this, but it's a little bit less of a transparent process than keeping the fees in the bylaw.
Deputy Mayor Lewis?
And the costs recovered through the alcohol fees, it's interesting to see, well, question is it normal that we recover KiwiSaver and things like that and stationery through these fees? Is that what normal approach?
Yes, we follow the Ministry of Justice guidelines, and basically all costs associated with the activity are recoverable through the bylaw.
Thanks, Angela. And Dean, I remember you saying to me in the draft agenda meeting that councils vary on what percentage of recovery they make from alcohol licence fees and how much is shouldered by ratepayers. So I should have asked then, and I'm asking now, the fees that we're thinking of moving to, are they broadly in line with councils of our size in terms of the size of fees licence holders will be paying?
Sorry, I did have a comparison table. I haven't got that right with me at the moment. Many of the councils that are introducing bylaws, our fees will still be somewhat higher, although Pororua proposal, which I've just seen now, just looking at it, theirs look like they're going to be higher than ours. And it looks like they're going for 100% cost recovery also.
I guess I'm just looking for assurance we're not grossly out of line with what other councils are charging, that's all. So thank you for that. All right, if that's the end of questions, there's a series of recommendations there. I won't read out all of them, but they're on page 10 of your agenda, which I'll move those recommendations. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Mitchell has seconded. Thank you. Senior moment. Any comment? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, obviously we're not signing the fees off today. We're signing out to go out for consultation. But I do have some huge concerns about how huge these increases are.
Pretty hefty.
For a lot of them, it's an 80% increase, which I understand the reason why. You can't update it outside of the bylaw, that makes sense. Looking at Potiua's fees earlier, they're taking a staggered approach over the next 3 years because they're in the same situation as us where things have got more expensive and they can't do it outside of their bylaw as well. So year one, they're proposing about 2,000, where we're proposing 4,000, and they're staggering it up to about where we are now in year three, so 2026. Probably not the time now to suggest that in the consultation, but just flagging that would be quite useful to have when it comes to the time to actually make the decision. Officers have said these figures are based on the estimated volume of applications being made, but I worry if we put the fees up so much, we just won't see the applications come through. And as the report notes, when the 90% cost recovery was put into place, it was acknowledged that the premises such as sports and community clubs provide a valuable service to our community, and that cafes, restaurants and other licensed premises help make Hutt City a vibrant place to live. For this reason, it was accepted at that time that 10% of the costs will be funded by rates. I still think all those things are valid. Cafes and restaurants and hospitality add a lot to our city. And at the time when businesses are struggling the most, I think we need to be trying to find a better medium ground than what's currently in front of us. But happy for it to go up for consultation, but would be quite good maybe to have a workshop somewhere between now and when the final decision is made, rather than trying to ad hoc come up with some suggestions at these meetings. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Number 4 in the recommendations is actually agreeing to amend to increase straight away. Should that be there if we're going out to consult?
Angela could give us some advice on that.
Yeah, that seems to be a little bit out of place.
I agree. Well picked up, Deputy Mayor Lewis. All right, I'll move recommendations 1, 2, 3, or with the seconder's permission, we'll delete item 4 as not appropriate, given that we're going out for consultation. So we're voting on items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, or rather recommendations of that number. Is there any further comment anyone wishes to make? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Sticking with alcohol, we're now moving to an intention to consult on a review of the local alcohol policy. Angela, you're back with us. Thank you. We've read the paper, but there may be things you want to highlight to us.
Just a couple of things. So the local alcohol policy obviously outlines our licensing restrictions in the district aimed at reducing alcohol-related harm. So the purpose of the paper in front of you is to seek approval on the focus of the public consultation, which is the retention of the current settings in the local alcohol policy. But we're seeking input from submitters to suggest any changes. And just to outline that we have engaged with quite a number of people. Some internal stakeholders include our environmental health manager, the alcohol team lead, Healthy Families, the city safety manager, the district plan team, the research and evaluation team. And externally, we've engaged with the local police, the national police, and the medical health officer. The general feedback from these stakeholders is that the current off-license caps are acceptable, but public health does note that they would prefer to see more off-license caps in the district. They feel that the trading hours could be restricted, and they have suggested implementing a sinking lid for capped areas. I would like to seek your views on the public consultation questions we've put forward, and those are on page 66. So in particular, I'd really like some comments on that. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, any questions for Angela? Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One is the other day when we were talking about control of alcohol in public places bylaw, there was a mention in a paper presented to us that we could consider caps for Waterloo and Moira. There was no proposal to make them alcohol-free areas, but we could consider caps. But this proposal doesn't recommend any caps in Waterloo or Moira, so I was kind of wondering what the decision making was around those two suburbs, why we haven't proposed caps in those areas.
The paper for the bylaw focused on alcohol-free zones, and I know that Waterloo and Moira aren't alcohol-free zones, but there were areas that we knew were of interest for the community to implement an alcohol-free zone. So that's why they were included in that paper. And so with the review that we did, although it didn't come out the other side as possibly meeting that evidential test for an alcohol-free zone, there was potential possibly to consider a cap. And although I didn't outline those two areas in this public consultation for the local alcohol policy, it is open for the public to make a suggestion for any suburb, not just those two.
Thank you. My other question was with regards to the very good submission on public health. One of the things they noted was quite technical in nature, which is that our current on-license hours sit outside the, they say permitted hours set out in the Act, but they're default hours set out in the Act, particularly with reference to opening times. So the default hours in the Act for areas that don't have a LAP is 8 a.m. We allow them to open at 7 a.m. I was just wondering why we allow them to open at 7 a.m. and why we are proposing to continue with that practice, given that in a sense, I guess it's more permissive than if we didn't even have a local alcohol policy.
I wasn't directly involved with the original local alcohol policy, but from my recollection, it was to cater for the likes of champagne breakfasts or breakfast functions on licences without the need for them to apply for a special licence, whereby they could do that activity under the current hours of their on licence.
I've got Councillor Brown online.
Thank you. The health report, talks about having a cap across Lower Hutt. I know the focus has been on alcohol ban areas, but in our own safety report, looks like even with the CTVs, it's had limited impact because the police are not responding to when there are alcohol issues, whereas the cap has made a difference. Also, they note that the areas of Stokes Valley, Taita, Nainai, and also Māori and Pacific, but our liquor alcohol plan is really just a continuation of our last one, and our outcome is reducing alcohol harm, but it's stayed pretty static from their view. So can we consider the cap across the city? And I know it's at consultation stage, but Nainai, Taita, Stokes Valley being more targeted, it looks like we've just continued with the same lap that we did from the last round.
Yep.
Those 3 areas have caps, I think.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
The recommendation from health was to have it across Lower Hutt, to be more proactive.
Would I be right in assuming, Angela, this is one of the things that we want people to have a say on? And that leads actually to my next question. What sort of information will be in front of people to help them, inform them and help them decide what they might have to say on this policy? I mean, we've got some very good information in front of us. Can the reports that are in front of us be up on the website, and can people be referred to them in case they want to know what the police view is, the regional public health view is?
At the moment, in the statement of proposal, I have just a summary of those reports. But if you would prefer that they be on the website in their totality, then I'm sure we can make that happen.
Personally, I think that would be very useful, yeah. The more information is available to people, the more informed they can be. Just a hot link from consultation documents. Any further questions for our officers? Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, the CCTV database application report's a really interesting read. But one thing I hadn't noticed ahead of our meeting 2 days ago was the comment in the executive summary that Lower Hutt Police attended 5 of the 319 reported incidents involving liquor ban breaches. This is roughly 1.5% of the total time. Yet the areas that we recommended, I know this is a overlapping question a bit with Tuesday's meeting, but we put quite a lot of weight on whether police thought there were issues or thought there weren't issues. If they've only turned up to incidents 1.5% of the time, should we not be using other sources for where potentially there might be issues? Like the health department had some suggestions with Moeda and Waterloo. Yeah, that's my first question.
Yeah, the CCTV camera report, the way that they tag alcohol breaches, it's difficult to take the stats from that report and relate it to how the police also report their actions, because we're kind of measuring them in different ways. When an action takes place in Lower Hutt that is captured by the CCTV camera, it is only tagged in one way. It could be an assault, but it could be alcohol fueled, but it can't receive both of those tags. A choice has to be made, and as the assault might be a more serious act than it being alcohol related, that's the tag it will get. So we don't have a real accurate picture of what's alcohol related from what the CCTV camera has picked up. So I haven't put an awful lot of emphasis on those numbers.
Councillor Tupou?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think the essence of the issue, in my view, is the accessibility to alcohol, and that's where we see certain social drivers and people over the years, communities. I'm thinking of Wanyamata who have banded together to advocate, and that social capital, that social pressure has actually led to certain applicants, giving up the course due to that concern around over accessibility or too many outlets in one community. So I think an interested party that could or should be consulted should be our rangatahi, our youth. I know that we'll be bringing someone in, or there's a piece of work there in terms of rangatahi, but I think that's an important voice that we need to engage with as well. Kia ora. Just seeking your views on that.
We've got quite a large list of interested parties for the targeted consultation. I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but I will definitely see what we have on this list for this group.
Any further questions? Angela did ask us to consider the questions they intend going out to in consultation, which are on page 66, and she's asked for any other questions that we feel should be asked. Did anyone have any thoughts on that? I think the key ones are there for sure.
Chair?
Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, there was one, this covers it certainly covers the basics of what's in the plan currently and how what's in there could be amended. I think one thing that was again mentioned in the public health report and isn't proposed that might be worth discussion is the concept of a sinking lid across our city. We've done that with pokie machines and had quite strong support from our community and from people who have to deal with the problems of problem gambling to bring that in. So I think it's definitely worth a discussion. Otherwise, you know, we're tinkering around the edges a bit. Certainly in favour of asking, and the question is already there, about caps, whether there are other suburbs that should have them or not, and asking about the trading hours. But I think that at least discussing that more drastic change of introducing a sinking lid across the city is a good conversation for our community to have.
Brad Cato.
Sorry, I was just going to say one of the problems with the sinking lid across the city for the likes of on licenses is people come in pretty quick to I guess pick up any available on licenses. You might get, say, 10 on licenses in Wainuiomata and none in other suburbs. So you'd have to craft it quite carefully to make sure you didn't get a on licensed city in a particular suburb and then none in others. So yeah, it might be a combined thing of you allow X here or yeah.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. The last question, should we change our trading hours? Are they the same in every burb? Could it be? Yeah.
Yes, I believe they are.
Isn't that? Thank you. My just comment on that is the questions are good. They're really open questions. So you're going to be getting comment back. You're not forcing people to yes, no. So I actually like that idea of doing it this way. Thank you.
Is it worth asking the question of people that Regional Public Health believes there should be a cap on licences across the city? What do you think of this? Or is that leading? Is that a leading question? Something for you to consider. There we go. All right, the recommendations are on page 27, recommendations 1 through 8. I won't read them out, but I'm happy to move them. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Tupou is going to second. Any further discussion? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. One of which is in totality for all of these different pieces we're discussing and consulting on in one go. I think there are a couple of communities. Certainly I've heard from Waterloo as their local ward councillor and seen in Moira, where I think they may be a little bit disappointed that we haven't proposed any changes there, but at least they have the opportunity to tell us that and suggest what those changes could be. The other thing I just wanted to mention, I don't know, I didn't have a question about it, and it's been noted by a couple of councillors already today, is my disappointment in the police response to all of this. It's a bit shocking, not actually surprising, because I live in a community where we have alcohol-free zone that isn't policed. So I'm not actually surprised to see it in writing, but a little bit shocked still to see it in writing that police consider the breach of a liquor ban as an administrative breach not requiring a response. It kind of makes the whole thing feel a little bit purposeless. So certainly just like to second, it was your call, Chair, to make those reports available to the public as well. There's going to be a bit of explaining to do to the folks of Waterloo about legal thresholds for putting bans in place and things like that. So the more that they can see about what levels of crime there are, but also what the police's attitude to all of this is, I think it would be useful for them to see that. So I don't think we've actually seen the police's own report yet. It's been summarised for us, but we haven't actually seen it. So I think it's a good idea to put these expert views into the conversation and into the consultation so people can see what those other parties think about all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Page 123, the Three Waters update and local government water services. No, I've skipped, have I? Yes, I have skipped. We're on page 88, and Bruce is going to tell us anything extra he wants to on the Jackson Street Three Waters renewal options.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kia ora tātou. I don't really have anything else to add. I just want to, I suppose, reiterate that this report is seeking a decision in principle, really, on the option, and that is to carry out the work simultaneously, and that's in response to a request for us to try and do these works with as minimal disruption to the community as possible. And while this disruption is still going to be significant, it is probably the most minimal in terms of all the options that have been put forward. Yeah, I just want to point out that in paragraph 2, and I wondered whether anyone's picked it up, I put wastewater pipe, but it was a stormwater pipe, which we were originally going to replace. So I'll just correct that. But other than that, I have Adam with me. Adam is from GHD, and Adam is here to answer any specific questions, technical questions that you may have.
Welcome, Adam. Councillors, any questions for Adam or Bruce on this paper? Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, noting that the current pipes were put in the ground over 100 years ago, what's the expected life of these new pipes that we'll be putting into the ground?
The design life for our projects will be 100 years.
So my other question then was about sea level rise. It's acknowledged in our office's paper, but not so much in the report. Last week at our district plan committee, we were told to now plan for 1.6 metres of sea level rise in the next 100 years, which will put all of this infrastructure underwater. So I just wondered what measures have been taken, extra measures hopefully, so that they will function as long as possible, particularly when they begin to become in contact with seawater.
We're in a difficult position because clearly these pipes have come to the end of their life and we have to renew them. What we're saying here with sea level rise is that for all of the Petone area, in terms of stormwater, which is going to be an issue, we may have to, we have to look at what options we're going to take strategically to deal with the effects of a changing climate and sea level rise. And one of those options may well be to build in pumping stations at various points to be able to pump this water out when the water table rises. But there may be other options that we want to look at, protection of some sort. But those are decisions for the future. But as far as possible, what we're saying is, we need to replace these pipes. We're doing what we can now, and the normal practice is to put pipes in that are going to last that length of time.
Yeah, that question definitely cropped up in the draft agenda meeting too. Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, paragraph 10 says the assessed options do not include major road reconstruction, which would add considerable cost. Just wonder if you could explain that a bit further. Is that sort of saying relay the entire road once we're finished digging it all up, or is that something different?
So we did receive a comment regarding the camber of the road and whether we could reform the road and cut down the camber. Now, to do that is a significant piece of work that has not been planned within the transport team and would cost a significant sum of money.
So included in the budgets is sort of relaying the road as it's been disrupted. Cool. Awesome. I'm assuming that was a last minute addition to the pre-agenda meeting. And then I had another question. Are we already planning, or do you think it would be a good idea to offer JSP some sort of additional assistance / funding to support the disrupted businesses as they move block by block? Or do you think we could support those businesses enough by ourselves?
That's not something that I'm qualified to answer.
Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, I just remembered one other I had, which was about the budgets. And there's a comment in paragraph 17 about council making a conscious choice to elevate these renewals on the work program at the expense of other priority renewal works, such as renewal of failing asbestos cement water pipes that may be in poorer condition. Is this the kind of stuff that we presented to us the next time it comes to us for a decision about where the funding might be drawn from?
I think it's something that you need to take on board now, that in principle, if you're making the decision that you want to replace all these in one go, you need to realise that what we've got in the 10-year plan is very limited for renewals. For instance, from years 4 to 9 in the LTP, we have no funding whatsoever for renewal of wastewater. So it's all stacked into year 10, 37 million, I think it is. Water is different, and stormwater is a much smaller amount. So the decisions that you're making now and through the LTP committee around the funding means that this will prioritise this particular area, but we've got to start somewhere.
Actually, a question occurs to me that Helen Swales made during public comment, Bruce, and I don't know whether you or Adam have any assurances. I mean, we've got to get on with this work and it's going to take some time to plan it, but she is talking about discoloration of water and potentially more iron in the water from this tuberculation, I think it's called. Is that something we're monitoring, keeping an eye on in terms of public safety?
To my knowledge, specific to this project, we haven't been, but I can't comment on Wellington Water Operations if they've had any monitoring activities on that.
We can find that information out and report it back to you.
I think Councillor Dyer had another question, and then Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Yeah, sorry, it may have been in the details, but just wondering if you could broadly sort of say what the disruption will be to Cuba Street. Obviously, these pipes cross Cuba Street, and we're planning on cutting Jackson Street off. I'm assuming we won't be doing that with Cuba Street. Just wondering how that'll be managed.
So the current plan when it comes to traffic management is to close block by block and move up the road or down the road. But as we come to intersections, there will be a need to, I suppose, cross over. So for a time period, I imagine there will be blocks on both sides of the intersection as we make the connections through.
I'd just add to that these works wouldn't start for at least 12 months, maybe a little bit longer. So, clearly one of the things we'll be doing if this is approved over that period of time is working out all of those finer details of how that will be planned and what mitigations we need to put in place to address all of the issues that we have identified to this stage, but there will be others that we have yet to identify.
Thank you, Bruce. And going back to Councillor Mitchell's reference to finances and bullet point 16, you've hinted at provision could be made from generic 3-water renewal pots as to the money, but it's sounding like throughout this report and then into the options, depending on what we do, the cost is going to either go on the ratepayers or we could reshuffle an option 20 and do it a bit differently, but that wasn't the preferred option by JSP.
Yeah, you've got, I suppose, 3 options in terms of how you might fund this. One of them would be to decide to put brand new money in. Another one will be bringing forward money from within the budgets, but as I pointed out, that there's some difficulty with that, and it means that other works that might have been prioritised in years 4 or 5, let's say, won't be able to be done. Or you could find other projects in that period that you decide you don't want to do. And I've had some discussion with Wellington Water around that, and there's very little that we can find that we would recommend you stop doing. So that would be a difficulty.
No further questions. I will read out these recommendations. Very important and expensive issue, and we may have people online. So the recommendations are that we note the options outlined in this report to renew ageing pipe infrastructure within a 560-metre stretch of Jackson Street between Queen Street and William Street. Note that most of the stormwater, wastewater and water pipes in this area were laid in 1915 and are in poor condition. We note the optioneering assessment work undertaken by GHD We note the construction time to undertake renewals simultaneously has been estimated to take between 32 to 42 months to complete, with a 95th percentile project estimate of 24.35 million, including contingency and funding risk. We note the Jackson Street program is in support after doing a survey, as we heard earlier this meeting. We note that the detailed planning and design for this option will take 12 months to complete, and so work wouldn't start until late 2025. And note that the budget provisions to undertake most of these works will need to be made from generic Three Waters renewal budgets and brought forward from out years in the long-term plan. So I'll move those recommendations. Looking for a seconder. Thank you. Anyone wish to make comment? I'll make comment. If ever there was something that encapsulates the significance of the challenge in Three Waters area ahead of us, it's this project. And with some trepidation, you would note that despite the expense and disruption this is going to cause, there are pipes in neighbouring streets that are just as old. So there we go. But we are living up to our philosophy of dig once, and we intend doing this simultaneously, and I think that approach has a lot to recommend it. Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping someone was going to mention Three Waters reform, because you're right, this is a perfect example of why we need to be doing things differently. Yeah, nearly $25 million is a staggering amount of money for half a kilometre of some pipes, but it has to be done. The disruption for 32 to 42 months on one of our most popular streets is going to be challenging for residents, tourists, visitors, the businesses. So as part of this, I don't think it needs a separate recommendation, but when this does come back to us, I think it would be quite useful to see what assistance council can provide the businesses that are disrupted in these areas, some sort of business support fund. I'm assuming we've already got our eye kind of on this with Riverlink. We know there's going to be equally as big a disruption in our CBD as we start the substantial works through there. Whether that's a direct business support fund that we administer or we work with JSP, obviously they're on the ground and very well connected with these businesses, but I think we do need to think how we can help these businesses, whether it's a fund that helps them transition part of their business online, or tourism to bring more people in, or not sure what the scope of it is, but I think we need to be thinking of what we can be doing to help these businesses. If we're spending $25 million on the pipes, I'm sure we can put a little bit more in the budget to help the businesses that are most directly impacted.
Thank you. Any further comment? Just to note that there were further recommendations over the page that I didn't get to do with recommendations to the long-term plan and asking officers to do a comprehensive implementation and communication plan. So the recommendations 1 through 11 have been moved and seconded. I'll put those. They haven't been seconded. Deputy Mayor Lewis seconding. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thanks. Bruce is staying where he is to talk to us about the Three Waters update and the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Bill submission. Bruce, anything to add to your report?
Just a few updates on the report. So in paragraph 4, the year-end capital spend we said was going to be around 72. At the moment, we're looking around 70.5 million, so a little bit less than that. Paragraph 6, we talk about the kilometres of renewals. That has actually gone up, and so we're going to achieve actually more than the 15.3 target. It's going to go to 15.8. But note, this financial year we're currently in will be significantly less. So we're going to be dropping back down to about half of that amount. I don't have that figure yet, but I will have it for you in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And that is because we're putting all of our renewals money into the wastewater treatment plant, or a lot of it into the wastewater treatment plant. Paragraph 12, the latest data on the leak numbers, they're down to 330, so it's trending down all the time. And just in terms of the water reform, the report back to the select committee on the submissions on the bill is due next Thursday, so we'll have more information on that, but we expect that there'll be some significant changes maybe to that. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Useful information. Deputy Mayor Lewis has a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bruce, for the report. Lots of good information and congratulations on the team for increasing the work, 15.8? It's fantastic. 21, just a comment, please, or an update on, there's mention there about better off funding and the reallocation of that fund. How does that work, or how did that work?
So with the change in government, the DIA have come back to us and asked us to have a close look at our better off funding to see what we might be able to redirect to Three Waters, whether that be renewal of pipes or in terms of the activities that we're currently undertaking to look at a new entity. So the area that we have identified as monies that we could redivert or that we will redivert is from the Petone project. And so there was 100K in that project, and I think we've only spent about 14 of it. So around 86,000 is still available, and we're proposing that that money be used to offset the costs that we're currently incurring in terms of the stage of work that we're doing with the 10 other councils on the new entity. Eastern Hutt Road, there was the vast majority of that 8.3 million, around 8 million, I think it was going there, and we've spent most of it. It's up to nearly 7 million spent, with other monies looking to be committed shortly. And the climate change campaign, 250K has been committed.
Thank you, Bruce. No further questions? Okay, I'll move the recommendations that we receive and note this report and its contents, and we approve in retrospect the submission made by Hutt City Council jointly with 9 other councils working together on the proposed regional water entity to the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangement Bill attached as Appendix 2. Do you have a seconder, please? Councillor Mitchell. Any comment? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just did want to comment on the submission, actually. Thanks to Dougal and all the officers who have been involved in putting that one together on behalf of the wider region. It was a very thorough submission, as it should be. That team's been working on this project for quite a long time in different forms, but makes some very real points, I think, about the timeline and resource implications, particularly for the work that's now ahead of us. Doing things a different way. And interestingly, too, points out that the proposal from the new government doesn't really even address the issues of co-governance or privatisation, some of the bigger issues that were the reason for them proposing it in a different way. And I liked too how there was a statement made in there from us that the reform process for Three Waters must result in arrangements that are enduring and therefore need to be done right rather than done quickly. And there's a bit in the submission that makes it feel like everything's being done too quickly, but also that it's taking quite a lot longer than it may have otherwise taken. So that's all out of our hands, but really good points have been raised in this submission. So thank you to everybody who put it together.
Okay, no further comment. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Thanks. And we have another retrospective submission. Just goes to show how things are moving quickly in the government area, and invite Paul Hewitt, Head of Transport, to speak to our emergency works submission. And John's joining as well. Gentlemen, anything else you wish us to know about this issue?
Kia ora, Mr Chair, members. Just one quick update that Waka Katai here. We're providing an update on the consultation this afternoon. Their general feedback was that they're going to be changing some of the definitions around emergency works, and also what qualifies for what is a qualifying event in terms of the emergency works funding. They're taking droughts out of as a qualifying event and pulling fires in. In respect to the thresholds for what is a qualifying event and the funding assistance rates, they're expecting to make a decision at the end of this year.
Thank you, Paul. Questions, councillors? John, got some other information?
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to add, not only were they looking at reducing the additional rate over the 51% we get for, and other councils get for storm-related events, it's going from a 1 in 10 to a 1 in 20 year event to qualify. But even more than all that, going back and revisiting our activity management plans and identifying basically what roads would get reinstated to what level. So prioritising, in the event of natural disasters, which roads we would want to be built back to a similar level and which ones we may not build back. So once they've considered all the feedback and come back, we'll come back to council because we may need to start to have some conversations around what that might look like.
And so, John, we actually need to do that work in advance. We need to be identifying now what roads we may not reinstate in the event of an emergency like this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we will start that work, but we're waiting to see what the final advice is from NZTA.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, but peripheral to all this, I was taken by the statement in paragraph 6 that one of the rationales for this change is to incentivise councils building in resilience through CapEx projects and maintenance to reduce remedial works after the case of an emergency. Has there been any signals from the government that they would put in a greater amount of co-funding for CapEx projects to make them extra resilient?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We're talking around funding a little bit later on from what we do know, but we're still waiting to see where that's going to go. The government has given a fairly clear direction that RONs and roads of regional significance and state highways will have a high priority. So we're just waiting to see what the rest of the program will look like, and we're likely to know in September.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. And just in regard to 5, the activity management plans, does that only cover roads? It's not footpaths and things like that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Roads and footpaths, the whole network. So.
Any further questions? All right, the recommendations are on page 144. We've pretty much covered what we're doing here. We're retrospectively approving a submission and we're noting the reasons or what the consultation was about and why we're alarmed about it. So I'll move those recommendations. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mitchell. Anyone wish to make comment? Move those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declared carried. Thank you. Yes, there we are. Paul, you're going to talk to us about our submission on the Land Transport Rule, Setting of Speed Limit Rules 2024, page 153 of your agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Ministry of Transport has put out a consultation regarding the setting of speed limits by local authorities. We've prepared a response which was included in the report there, and are seeking feedback so we can finalise the report to submit as part of the consultation undertaken by the Ministry of Transport. Just noting that the consultation closes today, so we have until 11:59 to submit that report. In large, we've proposed that we disagree with the intent of the changes proposed by the Ministry of Transport. They are looking to reverse a lot of the speed limit changes imposed by the previous government in 2022, and we feel that not enough time has passed between the implementation of those changes to now to understand whether they've been effective and if there have been any inherent changes in the safety to road users around those zones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So members will remember last year you approved our speed management program, one of the first councils in the country to get that over the line, which was appreciated. So we'll address some of the issues with the program rollout later in my report, but reducing speeds around schools in particular we feel is vital, and this is proposing to change that from being the area around the school, if you like, and the ability to have fixed low speeds so that the environment is safe around schools all the time, to X amount of metres from the gate, if you like, and it needing to be variable. So there is and it's inferring that a lot of that stuff will need to get rolled back if it doesn't meet that variable test and reduce the size of that. So we're also that speed management program we did for 24 to 27, which you approved. We're holding fire on that until the final decision's made by the Minister and the Ministry on what that looks like, and then we'll come back and brief you, expecting that to be sometime around September, around which parts may still be able to proceed. So you remember we did the CBD, for example, and looked at community areas and dropping those speeds. We looked at the Western Hills as a bulk area. I suppose the one, we're just not sure where this is going to go, the final decision in terms of being able to make ad hoc speed changes. And I'll use Harcourt Wherry as an example because we're all aware of the issues along there with antisocial vehicle use and speeding and everything else. So once that's come back, we'll have a better understanding of what we might be able to do. So unlikely to be able to do the whole speed program. I think that's becoming fairly clear. But what steps we need to go through to get certain speeds reduced in key high risk areas, we're still unsure until that final decision's made by the Minister.
Thank you, John. Questions for either officer? Councillor Dyer.
And that decision we're waiting on from the Minister, is that to do with this rule, or is it kind of a separate process? Are they waiting for this rule to go through before they make any decisions?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the rule will dictate what the process is and which speed changes can go through and which ones have to roll back.
Then I think it might be worth maybe explaining in our submission that it talks a lot about what we have done, but we're going to be in a weird, unique position where we've literally got schools hundreds of metres from each other, where some are still 50 and some have already been changed to 30. Probably fits under proposal 7 about reversing the speed limit reductions, maybe. But yeah, if they come back and say, oh no, you can't do any new ones, then we've got this really weird position where the one place you absolutely should have 30 Ks is not, and then some of the more questionable ones are. So I don't know where you started on it, but I think it's probably a point that's worth making if you think.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll see how we can fit that in. I think 7 is probably the right place for it.
Further questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just in regards to the changes we've already made, there's some mention in our submission of the funding for this next round of changes that's now going to be required. I wonder if we should include how much we've already paid for all the changes that we've made this year. In fact, including consultation and officer time last year, as an example of what we've already invested into this particular safety program. Do you have an idea of how much we've spent, for example, just on the signs and getting them installed this year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sure we can get that. We'll get a rough estimate as to what that is. I will also note that there is funding available to remove speed bumps, but not to implement. So should this go through as it is now, or with some tweaks, how we may look at making our city and suburban streets safer, won't be able to include speed bumps and potentially some restrictions on the speed limit. So we'll need to look at other options, which again, same thing with the funding as to how that might look. So.
Thank you. I think it would be worth highlighting that investment to the government. Councillor Stellinger has a question.
Thank you. Just under proposal 1, the engagement feedback that we're providing there, we say we do not agree with the sole reliance on crash statistics, and there's a pretty good reason given for that. I just wonder whether we should be suggesting what we would be proposing to refer to in addition to the crash statistics if we're saying that's not good enough by itself.
through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. It's a great question. Yeah, so we're talking about sort of sole reliance, and that's the direction they're heading. So with this proposal, there were some guidelines that were put out under the current rule that's up for consultation being changed around taking into account the type of street and where it is. So, you know, is it on an arterial? So then it's more likely to, a major road, it's more likely to have that variable speed as opposed to whether it's a side road in a small neighbourhood, but has, you know, a lot of vehicles still. So I think what we're after is a continuation, what we're proposing is a continuation of where it's at now, using crash statistics as part of that, but also looking at the form and function of the particular neighbourhood or where that school or where that street is, rather than a one size fits all. And we believe councils are best placed, knowing their own communities, to be able to manage that in conjunction with the rule as it is now.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. In relation to what the government's also doing with their boy races and things like that, did this submission, the subject matter of what we're feeding back on, did we use this to address boy races, and is it restricting us to control that activity?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that'll be on a street by street basis, and that's what we're waiting to see is how that's going to impact. So the Harcourt Wherry example I used before around what we can actually do to, for those members of society who do that, force them to drive safer and slower.
Councillor Mitchell.
I was just going to say, Chair, I have further suggestions to changes to the text. I know we're still in question time. I don't have any further questions, but I don't know how you want to handle those.
Make your suggestion. It's good.
Okay.
To make it because.
Yeah, I think because this is the only one that's not retrospective, and there's a chance to feed into here. Just a couple. Some of them are a bit smaller, and a couple of more substantial ones. Under Proposal 3, in the second paragraph, it talks about the support we received when we engaged on this, and I think it would be actually worth quoting back some figures on that. I took a look, and it was 75% support from the public, and not mentioned here, unanimous support from schools. And towards the end of that paragraph, I think is perhaps the right place to mention that, you know, we're partway through bedding in a change, and requiring a second change in 12 or 18 months is actually going to cause confusion amongst our residents. And also, as proposed, introduced complexity to some of the changes we've made. And I'm thinking about streets like Rada Street and Nainai, where that one street passes 3 schools. We went out of our way to make sure people weren't going 50-30, 50-30, 50-30, but under the new rules, that's exactly what would happen. Over the page in Proposal 7 about the reversal, as I already mentioned, I think it'd be good to quote how much money we've spent on that first round of changes, and also what we've done. I think elsewhere in today's paper, actually 400 signs at 43 schools, quoting those figures as well, so they can see the amount of work that's been done. And then I would conclude that discussion about funding, about the opportunity cost actually of us, whatever we're doing, wasting that money or wasting some new money, changing the signs again, particularly if it's not going to be funded, that there's actually an opportunity cost for our city. We would much rather have spent that money on other safety improvements to our roading network. So, yeah, and then I understand from your comments that probably it's too early in the piece to provide any actual data around has safety improved here, but I know that's certainly come up elsewhere in the country, in Auckland, where I think they've had theirs in place for a lot longer. So maybe we could even reference the safety improvements that have been seen elsewhere in the country if we don't have our own data to share. Thank you.
Yeah, very good, Councillor Mitchell. Any further questions? Right, recommendations are that we approve this submission, perhaps with councillors taking on board the suggestions that have been made today. Heads are nodding, that's great. And we note that consultation closes on 11th July. Looking for a seconder? Councillor Tupou, thank you. Any further comment? Councillor Tupou, then Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's frankly disheartening that we're in this position to begin with, and I think, and this is my opinion, and I believe it's a government overreach. As former colleagues have stated, and certainly the officers there's a local context that needs to be understood. The community feedback and support was very clear, and support for this direction goes back to when I was chair of the Waimata Community Board. And we had rangatahi and school kids coming up and advocating for safety measures from speed bumps to lower speed outside schools. So this is not news to us as local representatives. Confusion was mentioned in terms of how the public might sort of be confused. I think there's also a bit of, there's risk that of distrust. So we've sort of responded to the feedback and agreed with these speed revisions, and then government's imposing something else. So there could be a bit of distrust from community on that. And also, as councillors have already mentioned, the ratepayers' investment that we put into this. So there are a lot of factors, I think, that make the point that we should stay the course. Obviously, it's difficult, but I commend the submission and the work by the officers for this comprehensive submission. Kia ora.
Good words, Councillor. Councillor Dyer and then Councillor Stellinger.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief because I know the submission's due in 8.5 hours. Yeah, completely echo the points of Councillor Tupou and had the exact same thoughts as Councillor Mitchell for additions in there. I did wonder whether we have, under the introduction piece, most of the points that Councillor Mitchell made, rather than sort of keeping them with the proposal. The two main ones, I think, is just telling a little bit more of the story of the journey that we've been through, that the councils and the community know their streets best, and quoting those numbers there, 75% and unanimous school support. But that also these changes are still bedding in, and to change it now would just be madness. The other thing I think we really need to stress, and I know it is briefly mentioned a little bit on like the very last page, is the cost of this. I think we need an approximate figure, but then take the higher estimate of that number on officer time, councillor time, consultation. Like, we have spent a lot of money on these changes. Even include the changes to fixing some of the ones that aren't correct. Include those in the numbers, because it's an absolute waste of money having to go back and revisit these. Yeah, I won't go anymore, but completely support everyone else's thoughts.
Councillor Stellinger.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what's written in the submission and also the suggested changes that councillors have put forward. But I do start from a somewhat different position to other councillors, which I noted at the time we were debating implementing the previous changes. And that's that I didn't fully agree with the rules which we had in place before. I'm not saying that I agree with the rules which are being put forward now either. Perhaps I do to some extent, but not to the full extent, and probably for the reasons that are being discussed already. So if it was a submission from me, if I was the dictator in this situation, it would probably be a bit more balanced in terms of liking maybe some aspects of the intent of the change, but not all of them. So I think the best thing for me to do, I'm not going to suggest any changes because I don't think they'd be ones which the majority would support. So I just would signal then that I'll vote against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments? It's been moved and seconded. From memory, I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Do you want that recorded, Tony? I sure a yes, please. Mime.
Yes, yes please.
Yes. Thanks, Tony. All right. Another submission. I would invite Jeff Roberts, Manager Waste Minimisation, and Tim Johnson, Head of Planning, to talk to us about our submission on Upper Hutt's Plan Change 50. Welcome, gentlemen. We've read your report. Is there anything else you want to make us aware of?
Tēnā koutou, through you, Mr. Chair. No, just to note, this is, we're just trying to protect the interests of the landfill, which is a significant piece of infrastructure for the council and the local community, and that is the spirit of this submission.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, sorry, I apologise. I did mean to look at the dates of this meeting, and Councillor Stellinger may know better, but I think it may be worth the submission going to the Hutt Valley Shared Services Committee as well. Obviously, we regularly report through there on the landfill, and they've always got a lot of things to say about the landfill. Yeah, just keen to hear your thoughts on that, or it's already a consideration.
No, that's a good point. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we'll put it through to that committee as well.
No further questions. I'll put the recommendation that we retrospectively approve the further submission to proposed plan change 50 attached as Appendix 1 to the report, and further note the submission is in opposition to the rezoning of rural land adjacent to the landfill boundary to allow residential development for the reasons that the interests of Silverstream landfill are best protected by opposing further residential development on neighbouring land. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis has seconded it. Comment? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just again to acknowledge everybody who put their thought into the submission. Very sensible submission, I think, particularly knowing that the issues that other councils are already having around similar things with existing landfills, let alone housing kind of coming in right next door as well. So things like the issues mentioned, odour and dust, are notoriously hard to control at the best of times, and seeing where those maps lie in relation to our landfill, it was pretty crazy that they were proposing all of that land to be zoned for residential use.
Thank you. No further comment. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Moving to regulatory matters, Tim Johnson staying with us. Richard Barton, Head of Building Control, is online, as is Justin Roberts, Head of Environmental Protection. Anything any of you want us to know extra to what's in the report?
No updates from me.
Alison's got an update.
I'd just like to add that the in terms of results, the building consents figures for the end of June, we're up to 80.77% for building consents through in statutory timeframes and 96.43% for CCCs, which is, as you'll agree, is a significant improvement from about 4 months ago. As well as that, we have reported that we had 110 applications in for, before the 30 June deadline for resource consents. We vetted those applicants. Tim may want to say a little more about this, and we have 108 of them that we have accepted into the system. So, plenty of work to do.
Okay, councillors, any questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just on that last note, we always anticipated a bit of a rush due to us increasing developer contributions. We did decide to phase those in over time. So those applications that did come in, has anyone kind of subsequently noted that they're not actually particularly urgent, that they're willing to wait a bit longer for them to be processed?
Yeah, we've got, out of those 108 applications, there are a number that the applicants have voluntarily put on client hold. In other words, they have gone through a process of saying these ones aren't as important, but some they have said are a priority. So that's a signal. And then some others, the applicants have agreed to Section 37 extension. So they haven't put them on hold, but they've agreed to the longer than 20 working day timeframe. So certainly, yeah, it feels very different this time. There isn't the same pressure to get those consents through now that they've been accepted.
And when the applicant chooses to put the extension there with that section, what you just said, does that count negatively towards our reporting numbers?
No. So there's the two things. One, the client on hold means the working days aren't ticking. The Section 37 extension, we don't count the extra days, but the clock is still ticking. So slightly different. Yeah.
A question asked out of curiosity, and Dallas, you may not know the answer, but in where there's a little section talking about infringements and abatement stuff, there's been complaints about noise and access to do with Kmart. Just slightly curious about that.
Yeah, I can answer that. Basically, it's the loading area that's next to Riddler's Crescent. The complaints have been about the loading hours that are operating, so we are certainly following that up.
Okay, thanks. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Okay, thank you. Following up on Riddler's Crescent, and I see there is a notable consent coming through. Will the residents be notified of that, being able to contribute?
Can't make that statement now, obviously. We'll go through the process, the notification process. What I would say, not predetermining, is the extension is towards the overbridge, so the other side from the residents. But we will do the proper assessment, obviously.
Yeah, I just, on that subject, like historically, the layout was wrong, you know, like looking at the original consent with all the rubbish and emptying stuff happening down by the residents. And now it's going to be counted. So, you know, really it should have been opposite as a nicer way to build in a residential area. And, you know, they do have ongoing issues in that area, so.
Probably something that the consent application will consider. Did you have a question, Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, it was on the exact same issue. Is the extension to the Kmart building to do with mitigating some of these issues on the other side, or is it purely just making the shop bigger?
It's additional floor space. Yep.
Okay, the recommendation is that we receive and note this information, which I'm happy to move. Seconder. Councillor Mitchell, any further comment? All right, I will comment that it's great to see the arrows heading that way in both the building consent and resource consent area, and congratulate the team on the ongoing work to get that under control, because it must feel like you're under pressure all the time.
It was hard work getting there.
Well done. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Thanks. Moving to the Economy and Development Director's report. John, we've read your papers. Anything else you want to raise with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the first report that we've done on the infrastructure work sitting in the Directorate. So just wanting to highlight a couple of things, noting that you've already seen the papers. So I won't go through all of it, but the Pitaoni Landings project is something that our urban development team are doing. There were two different projects that were presented to the Pitaoni Project Steering Group in March. Some more work's been done on those, and we'll be going back to that group shortly. We will then, with a high-level timeline, work on the cultural narrative and some analysis. We'll then update members after that. So this is just an early snippet of the work that's being done there. I won't go into Te Parahonuku. We had a pretty good briefing last night, and just noting that officers are working on some timing around a visit for members to that project in late August or early September, weather and tides permitting. The implementation, I'll just get Paul to come up and join us for a couple of these shortly. The implementation of paid parking in Pitaoni is on track for 1st of October. So the machines are in the process of being ordered. There's actually quite a few machines that we do need. So given that and taking learnings from other cities, if you don't have a parking machine in each block, then they're less likely to be adhered to. So hence there are, in some of the bigger blocks, there's more than one. So that's on track for 1st of October. So as far as the back to speed and the school speed rollout, as you'll be aware, there have been a number of issues with the implementation of that program, which is not acceptable. So internally, we've done a lessons learned and looked at what's happened. There have been changes in staffing with insufficient handover between staff, probably not enough oversight at key points, and then the instructions and management of the contractors doing the work has not necessarily been that great either. What's resulted in that is also a number of schools that weren't approved having signs put in. As soon as we were aware of that, they were, or most of them have been removed or very close to now. And again, that was instructions given to contractors that wasn't correct. So we have stomped on that pretty quickly, and because that is absolutely not acceptable. So the staff, we've been working with the staff and the EPMO to implement better processes around this. Rather than this school and that school and this school over here being dealt separately, it should have been done as a program overall. So, so that is the lessons that, that we've learned and what we're implementing from there. High Street and Bolcott is progressing around for the Somerset development and expected to be finished by the end of August. Biddle, Milne and Johnson, from what I hear, we've been completed today with final inspections still to come. So that was a project where, as you remember, there was, very narrow streets, as we've got quite a lot of those around the city and environment, with some significant safety concerns on some of those streets and how parking was being policed by local members, local citizens and local members of groups. Once the construction started, the ground conditions were so poor that significant extra work was required in some of those projects. So what should have happened was that should have been the pause, and the team should have come back and sought further direction whether you wanted to proceed. The works did proceed, albeit scaled back a couple of the parking bays that were put into some of the later streets. So the funding from Waka Kotahi and the council funding within that traffic code were running out on the 30th of June. So it needed to be done. If it had been paused for too much longer, we wouldn't have been able to complete it. However, that doesn't excuse the fact that there was not enough updates coming through and further direction sought. So just want to acknowledge that. Riverlink, so we'll be briefing you again on Riverlink in the coming months as we go through. There's a lot of work on scheduling and timing of what's going to happen when that we've been doing. We've also set up the group looking at all of the disruption and traffic flows and taking points from councillors before around with Jackson Street and all the works going on there and all of the disruption that's going to occur. So looking at the timing of various things across the city, our renewals program, maintenance, obviously we have to get in and do it, but when our road renewals are happening, when the Wellington waterworks are happening, and ideally where possible, we would renew the road over the top of those, if at all possible straight after. But also the other utility companies, Chorus, Metlink Future Bus Program, NZTA program on the highway, they all need to be coordinated in one go with oversight. So we'll come back and give you an update on that work, as well as the parking management plan work that's being done in the city, but also the work we're doing, setting up a group to work with businesses during and after the works. So what initiatives we're going to look at, what resourcing we're going to be looking at within the Riverlink program and our business team to work with businesses throughout, and looking at events and little things to sort of activate the city and bring people in while that's all happening. And then just finally, the raised pedestrian platforms. Well, not quite finally, second to last. So generally that has progressed well. There's been a couple of issues with some of them. Using different contractors and different conditions has meant that some of the designs are not the same, and that is actually the same if you look at other cities as well. I know where I live in Porirua, there's 3 or 4 different designs depending on what street you're on. But we want consistency. So in future, what we'll be doing, again, is gripping that up as a whole program, not individual projects, but having a consistent look and feel. There are different timings for getting the painting done, and some of them are still to be done, and Paul will be able to talk about that in a second. And the lights take a little bit longer to order and come in, but there should still be speed restrictions in there until painting and lights and everything's done. So, so there's some learnings in there that we will be implementing. And just to finish up on the slips, so Wainuia-Mata Hill progressing really well, due to be finished at the end of August. Same with Harbour View, and London Road is pretty much done and be completed in the next week or so. There's a lot of work going on with Eastern Hutt Road for the next stage, so the north of the roundabout, which you know where the cones are on the hillside, and below the road, which has been a kind of historic issue. So we'll be coming back with more details on that work and potential timing, And then that will fall, even though it's way over there, that'll fall into that congestion disruption group as well, because we need to manage when all these works are done on the whole network in conjunction with NZTA and any works they may be doing at the Riverside kind of area in Upper Hutt and anything on State Highway 2. So thank you. I'm open to any questions.
I'll kick questions off. I notice when we talk about the raised crossings that are still to be done, the word raised is missing from the Waterloo Road crossing, and you'll have seen probably the public comment from people heading north along Waifatu Road, going around that corner, and there's a crossing there. They feel it's very, very close to the corner with a high fence. Any comment, John?
Thank you. So there was a lot of engineering advice put into those at the start. So there's also, and yeah, we did bring those through council, and that was traffic patterns, everything was taken into account. I will note, sorry, I can't read my writing. There's a couple of crossings that should have been raised that in the process of we're working through making sure that they are. So that will be done. We'll give an update in the next week or so around the timing for those being implemented. So that should have been done up front. So.
Sorry, Waterloo crossing will be a raised crossing.
So the two that aren't, that have been raised by members, yes.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just while we're on raised crossings, I wanted to ask about Waifetu Road. Paragraph 34 mentions due to budget and concerns regarding heavy traffic routes, Waifetu crossing has been descoped from 21-24. The following paragraph is about 24-27. Is that Waifetu crossing going to be, has it been delayed, or is it not happening because of whatever the concerns are around heavy vehicle traffic?
Through you, Mr. Chair, once our 24-27 program has been approved in principle by NZTA, we'll get an understanding of that. So that'll be added in there, which will allow a little bit more time to do a bit more investigative work.
So our intention is that it will still happen currently?
At this stage, yes.
Further questions? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, just want to clarify. So 100% Waterloo Road crossing is not finished. It will be raised.
That's correct.
Yeah. And what was the second one that you talked about? You said there was two? Cool. And my second question was, you mentioned Biddle, Milne, Johnson works sort of getting a bit more expensive, and it should have come back to us. Do you know what the total cost is for those works? How much more was it than what we signed off?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're waiting for those final costs. We did some value engineering to reduce some of the scope of some of the works. Once we have that, we'll let the members know.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Number 13, paid parking in Petone. The Peel Street car park, we had a lot of people, comment about having some spaces in the library car park. Has any consideration been put into this? Sorry, I've missed it then.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, those changes are and around potentially those and timing, because there's a mix of time constraints. Will go need to go via Petone Community Board to traffic next month. So.
Thank you. And the other one I had was on, you mentioned it to me offline, John, the wayfinding and new stuff down at Petone Foreshore. I just wanted to know if that is possible to go back through, to be looked at through the Petone steering group as well, because I don't even remember seeing that report.
Through your chair, yes, no, absolutely.
And just a request for further, if there's anything referenced, could we have just a link to the papers? Thank you.
Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, I've got a few on the school speed review. Do you have an indication of when the current phase, noting not the CBD stuff, when that's likely to be all finished?
Yeah, the team are regrouping at the moment during the school holidays, and reviewing all the signs that have been established, reviewing all the papers that have been put through to council and the approvals that were received from council. And we envisage that will be completed by the end of the school holidays.
Cool. And do we know yet why it's taken so much longer than expected to do this rollout? This is meant to be done before the start of term 1 at the start of the year. I'm just worried with the rollout of the CBD and potentially reverse rollout, depending on how the government decides, that we really need to take a lessons learned approach to what we've done going forward. Do we know why it's taken so long?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, Councillor, as I said up front, we have done the lessons learned. We have reviewed changes in personnel, not sufficient handover, not enough planning up front before it went out, basically. So that will absolutely not happen again.
And then the final question is, who's footing the bill for all the incorrect signs that we've needed to move or replace or shift around? Is it our mistake? Are we footing it? Is it the contractors? A bit of both?
We'll be working through with the contractors. So there quite possibly is some in there that they should not have and weren't told to. So we're just going to work through that with them as part of the work that Paul's overseeing.
And I know we talked about the funding before in the submission. Do we know how much we've just spent just on signs and rollout yet? No.
We'll try and get as much info before 11:59 as we can for that submission.
Might be an idea when that submission done, and I don't envy you guys with your deadline, but could we have a copy of it? Be good for future reference. Yes. Councillor Mitchell. Oh, Councillor Stellinger, sorry.
Thank you, John, for the comprehensive report and your comments as well. Just one question, and it's a request for information, really. I found the information on maintenance and renewal, paragraph 44 and 45, interesting, but I'm wondering if in the future, maybe at once a year, end of year reporting, we could have that information showing, what percentage of the network we're actually resurfacing and resealing during the year. And then how that equates to our asset management plans.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Yep, and great question. So Paul's going to give you an update on those numbers because those were the numbers that we had at that time, and he'll be able to give you a percentage now. But that is something every meeting I'm anticipating to do a report such as this with up-to-date info at that time, and then a roll up at the end of the year. But I'll hand over to Paul just with the updated stats.
Yeah, so in the report there are interim figures that were available at the time. The final figures for the surfacing included the chip sealing, which was 57,700 square metres, which equates to approximately 6% of the network. And in terms of rehabs, 8,288 square metres. In terms of for the rehabs, that's similar to previous years for the last 2 years. With respect to the chip sealing, it's approximately double what was done in the last 2 years.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Some of my questions have been covered already. I did have a couple more. One was that under the heading of Cuba Street Bridge, it begins by saying that seismic assessments for all Hutt City bridges were last conducted in 2001 by a specialist bridge engineer. So I was just wondering what our policy or process is around assessing the bridges, all of the bridges in our city.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor, it's generally every 20 to 25 years. So this is the last one. It was meant to be done in COVID and then it's slightly delayed. But that work is underway now and we'll update you by the time of the next meeting, if not earlier.
Thank you. Moving on to paid parking in Petone, and you mentioned the machines being shipped in from Australia, and I remember there was a bit of controversy in Wellington when they bought in new machines that didn't take cash. Are our machines going to be taking cash?
I don't believe these machines will be taking cash.
And the last one for me was around wayfinding. The paper says the project is using wayfinding suite developed in 2013, which I assume is a typo. We looked at one quite recently. I recently was in discussion with somebody in the disability sector who said they had seen them and weren't particularly happy with them. What kind of consultation was done with disability sector in particular, and is there still room for further conversation?
Through Mr. Chair, there was significant consultation that was done at the time, but you're quite right, 2023, not 2013. But we will find some further information and come out by elected members with an update and a copy of the wayfinding guide too.
Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, I've got one on Harcourt Wherry Drive. When this last came to us, it's on paragraph 33. When this stuff came to us, there was quite a bit of urgency to get it across the line because the funding was due to expire in the end of July, I think it was from memory. But now it's saying it's been rescheduled till late 2024. Does that mean we've lost that funding?
Through you, Mr. Chair, given it's within the work scope of area of Riverlink, we're combining it with that now. So no, in that respect, previous funding, yes, but under that wider, so at the appropriate time, we'll be doing that, but that is actually, as I've kind of noted in the report, the speed rule is going to play quite a big part in this as to whether we can implement that and how we go about that. So we're absolutely still intending to do that, and potentially further ones down by Fraser Park with some other traffic calming measures, but we just need to wait and see what the decision from the Minister around speeds is.
So if the Minister chose not to reduce the speed, we wouldn't be able to do the crossings there?
Through you, Chair, we'd need to look at other ways of slowing down. And I know Paul's investigating different road surface types, similar to the non-skid we've got up on Wainui Hill, but not that level. That stuff's very expensive and is shipped internationally. So other ways that we can do to reduce speed.
Perfect segue. You must have seen an expedite highlighted, which was the Wainui Hill road resurfacing. Paragraph 45 says that for the coming work program, we are estimating an approximate 2,000 metres of length of road section to be resurfaced. Then paragraph 47 says in the same period of time, we're proposing to resurface 2.3 kilometres. That's more than the entire amount we're planning on doing for the whole city. So I'm just wondering, is one of those numbers wrong? The total amount's 2 kilometres, but just in Wainui alone, we're doing 2.3.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to you, but that looks like an error. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
No further questions?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just clarifying, these are they are just initial figures at point in time as well, but once with that disruption working group and the planning of all the work across the city, and the funding, which we're talking about a little bit later, that'll kind of dictate how much we can actually do. So.
That was another question I had without preempting. I'll discuss it later.
Very wise. Okay, no further questions. This is a receive and note report, which I'm happy to move. Have a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Lewis. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried.
Sorry, Chair, I was planning on making a few comments. You were so quick. Could I please just make a few comments?
Deliberately quick, but yeah, no, okay. Let's have your comment.
Yeah, my comments are around the school speed rollout. I've been really disappointed with the rollout. I think the biggest risk that we all acknowledged when we were signing off these speed signs was that people were actually going to follow the new signs. Things that I've been dissatisfied with, no signs at the end of zones, poor sign placement, wrong signs in the wrong places, signs outside schools that we as a committee decided, hey, these actually need a bit more work. They need to go out for further consultation. Some of those schools have had signs put outside, and obviously it's been the community coming to us saying, hey, you said you were going to reconsult on this. Why is there now a police speed camera outside the school zone policing people and issuing tickets for a zone that should never have had signs put up? I know I've already raised these issues through various channels, so I won't continue too much, but I do want to on record that I am disappointed about the rollout of our school speeds. Similar concerns with the raised pedestrian crossings we've got going out across the city. Completely agree with the need for them, but I think how we have gone about it is subpar. There are some roads in our city, Cambridge Terrace, perfect example, where you drive down there, there are now 4 crossings. Everyone has a different design, a different layout, different signage, different camber, different steepness of the curbs. We thoroughly considered the designs when they came to this committee. We asked lots of questions, particularly around lane widths and refuge islands in the middle of crossings. advice from officers then was like, we need these things, it's what makes them safe. If we don't extend the curbs, you can't see around the corner, and now they've been built completely opposite in some of the designs to what we signed off after we grilled the designs a bit. And now we're seeing that some of the things that we questioned about, particularly I'm talking about Waifatu Road, Waterloo Road, the curb has not been extended, which means the visibility on that corner is extremely poor. And you go through there now and there is no temporary signs, nothing to say, hey, this isn't quite finished yet. So yeah, some of the concerns there, I would like my dissatisfaction noted on the raised pedestrian crossings part of the paper.
Thank you, councillor. Yep, some of that is shared, and to be fair, officers have given us a bit of a mea culpa on that and lessons learned, but they're fair comments, particularly Waterloo, Waifatu. All right, let's move on to the Infrastructure and Regulatory Forward Work Programme on page 187. Are there any questions to do with that, Deputy Mayor Lewis?
Thank you. I did ask for this before, just noting that the road closure for the Petone Fair, that needs to be moved forward to September, if that could be noted by officers, please.
I'm sure they have.
November's too late for that for that committee.
I see Paul has taken note, so that's great. Okay, I move that this report be received and noted. Seconder, please. Councillor Dyer, any comment? All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Questions? I have no questions. So I will move the exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely NZTA Waka Kotahi indicative allocation for 2024-27 for local road pothole prevention and local road operations, and a discussion on the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. Can I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis, thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. I declare the public part of this meeting closed at